My name is Ben Agbanti. I'll be your host. My name is Ben Agbanti. I'll be your host today for the Dad's Mother Show. On today's show, we'll be talking about equal shared parenting, how children need to have both of their parents actively in their lives, and why it is absolutely necessary for their development. For today, I have Mr. Gene Colman. Uh, Mr. Colman is a 1977 graduate of Osgood Law School and was called to the Ontario Bar in 1979. Starting at the province's first unified family court in Hamilton and then based in Toronto from 1988, he has dedicated his entire career to family law. While in law school, he proposed the model for the Osgood Intensive Family Law Program and was instrumental in founding the Canadian Journal of Family Law. Justice for children has been a constant priority for him. He played a leading role in founding the Canadian Equal Parenting Council and Lawyers for Shared Parenting. He plays an active role in the Equal Shared Parenting Working Group, a committee consisting of the leaders of the principal shared parenting advocacy organizations in Canada. He has drafted a proposed equal shared parenting bill. Access to justice has been one of Mr. Coleman's main concerns. While in law school, he served on a bench bar committee studying models to implement an organized system for the representation of children, and then served on the official guidance, now Office of the Children's Lawyer, or OCL, First Child Representation Panel. He has served on a committee of the Family Dispute Resolution Institute of Ontario that critically examined the advisability of creating a new class of family law paralegals who might enhance access to justice in Ontario family law cases. Procedural fairness in the family law system has always been one of Mr. Coleman's major concerns. This emphasis on fairness to all the participants within the system led to his assuming an active role in the ad hoc committee that is addressing the recent judicial pronouncements with respect to but not really post COVID protocols. Mr. Coleman is a published legal author whose work has been cited favorably by the Supreme Court of Canada. He is a member of various organizations, including the Ontario Bar Association, the American Bar Association, the Association for Family and Conciliation Courts, the Family Dispute Resolution Institute of Ontario. Mr. Coleman and his wife, Dr. Lisa Goldstein, have 7 children and numerous grandchildren. This is a man who is truly blessed. Now, here is the interview with Mr. Coleman. Mr. Coleman, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm truly honored to have you. Your work has gone far. It's taking somebody like me to read a lot about you, your commitment to help families, to help children, and to see that fairness plays a very critical role in our society. Thank you so much for having you on today. My first question to you, Mr. Coleman, is you are actively helping to push a legislation on the equal shared parenting in Canada. Are you able to tell us some more about what you've been doing up to date in terms of what and how you are pushing this legislation through? We will be very glad to hear and then be able to rally some support behind you. To reach out to various MPs and get them to hear our stories and what need to be done for children and families. I think your mic. Okay. I think you're on now. Your mic was off, but I'll edit it after, so don't worry. You can go ahead.
So I've asked you.
Question basically is you are actively helping to push a legislation on equal shared parenting,
Okay.
and I want us to I want you to be able to tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, it didn't just start in the last year or two. And there were two previous bills before the federal parliament at a time when the Conservative Party was in power.
Mhm.
And at least for the second bill, and maybe the first bill, many years, it was a private member's bill in both situations, put forward by then MP Maurice Vellacott from Alberta. And others had taken a stab at drafting the bill. And I came along with some other people in the Community Equal Parenting Council. And I worked with them. And as a lawyer, have certain drafting skills. So we tried to fix it up and concise it down. And then MP Vellacott brought it forward then to Parliament. And it did not get past first reading. Of course, in our Parliament, you have to have 3 readings before a bill is on its way to becoming law. Well, that was disappointing, particularly because a rebuttable presumption for equal shared parenting is the official, has been and still is the official policy of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Mm. Mm. Wow.
And one would expect our Prime Minister, then Prime Minister, the Honorable Stephen Harper, to have supported that bill.
Mm.
He's a good conservative, was a good conservative, small c and large c, and therefore he should support what the party has decided is their official policy. But he didn't. And I will speculate that he didn't because the powers that be in the Department of Justice, the family law section,
Mm-hmm.
and other powerful sources such as the Canadian Bar Association, of which I am a member, but not an executive member, were opposed to this legislation for various reasons, which we won't get into now. Maybe we'll cover it later.
Okay.
And it was, the bill was gone. So then what happened, many years passed, and the federal government, now the Liberals under Mr. Trudeau, the Junior,
Mm-hmm.
brought forward Bill C-78. And Bill C-78 brought some much needed reform to the Divorce Act. As the feds were doing this, the provinces got on board, particularly Ontario,
Mm-hmm.
and enacted the virtually the same legislation on a provincial level. Of course, the Federal Divorce Act covers people that are married,
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be married anymore. And the Provincial Children's Law Reform Act covers those that aren't pushing for divorce and those that were never married and those that just live common law, etc. But the reforms were basically the same. So as with any bill of this nature, Parliament, House of Commons, Justice Committee holds hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And I was privileged to speak to the members of the committee. There are about 20 of them or so, of all parties, on equal shared parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And we urged the federal government to amend the Bill C-78 to bring in a rebuttable presumption of equal shared parenting. And the proposed changes that we came up with, and I principally drafted those along with one other fellow,
Mm-hmm.
were much more concise, much more straightforward, and did not bite off more than we could chew. It was an appendix to actually the paper that we presented to to the committee. It was a very good research paper, I think. Some of my best writing, I think. And it's very help, and I'll give him very big honorable mention. George Piskor,
Yeah.
Iskor, who many you may know, and many
Yeah.
of the people listening may know. George is nothing short of a genius, and his knowledge of family law is legendary. And we were the principal authors of the paper, which had as an appendix what the amendments to Bill C-78 should be. It wasn't rocket science. Our paper covered off the usual arguments against equal shared parenting. It was fully footnoted with references to the social sciences. And we hoped that reason might prevail. Now, Bill C-78 did not have a rebuttable presumption. And I was somewhat surprised that the other presenters, many of the other presenters, if not most of the presenters, which included your usual group of feminist slanting organizations and shelters organizations. I'm not against feminism, I'm not against women's shelters, but many of them have an agenda, which is woman good, man bad.
Right.
That's just not life. There's good and bad in everybody. So they were, and the Canadian Bar Association, of course, apoplectic, and academic friends of mine went similarly apoplectic about equal shared parenting. So we asked the question, why are they so scared? They're scared of Gene Colman and Brian Ludmer and George. Brian did a great presentation as well. They are.
Wow.
They are scared. We've got them on the run. Got them on the ropes. The honest social scientists and legal scholars among them know from the work that we brought forward and brought to their attention, and that they would know anyways, that a rebuttable presumption for equal shared parenting is the way of the future.
Right.
And I was proud to play a role. Why make so much fuss about that concept when it's not in the bill? Why did they feel they had to protest so strongly against what people like Colman put forward on behalf of Equal Parenting Council, Lawyers for Shared Parenting, various other organizations? We had about 7-8 organizations that signed on to our presentation.
Wow.
All right. Now, to further answer your question, if I haven't bored you enough already.
No, it's exciting. I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying it.
Further to that, there's an organization or a committee called the Equal Shared Parenting Working Group. I'm on that group, as are other leaders, such as Glenn Cheriton, George Score, Brian, the usual gaggle of suspects, Paulette McDonald, and others. Sorry for the others I didn't mention. And we have come together to try and influence the governments of Canada to pass a rebuttable presumption of equal share parenting. We are taking another run at it this time. I, on behalf of the committee, have drafted a bill that is even simpler than the other proposals that George and I put forward years ago. Simpler. And the goal would be to get this bill into committee. So it's got to pass 2 readings. And then it goes to committee. And given the state of the social science, we are even better positioned now to point out how good this will be for the children of Canada and for the families of Canada, fractured families of Canada. And it's good on many, many levels, which we'll maybe get into later. But the question was, what efforts am I making?
Mm-hmm.
So we have this draft bill, very, very short. It will be drafted as simple amendments to the Divorce Act
Mm-hmm.
that retain the best interests of the child test, that retain the importance of family violence, sections that are in Bill C-78. And we are working hard to get someone to sponsor it, either to start it in the Senate and then take it to the House, or start in the House and then take it to the Senate.
Okay.
We're working on both, and we do have some MPs and some senators that are
Mm-hmm.
very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just say here, the more you and the members of your organization,
Mm-hmm.
other committed advocates across Canada, communicate with their members of parliament that the Divorce Act needs to be changed so that, all things being equal, there should be equal parenting time and equal decision-making rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
we say rebuttable presumption. We say all
Right.
things being equal, because we know
Mm-hmm.
that it's not appropriate in all situations.
Right.
Right now, we have a presumption.
Mm-hmm.
That presumption is every second weekend and maybe once during the week for dad.
Right.
Visit dad.
Right.
You won't find that in any case law enumerated, set out like that. You won't find it in any statute.
Oh, really?
That's what we're struggling against.
Mm.
Proud to have been a part of this struggle since the mid-'80s. And I'm getting on in years. I'm 72 years of age. And I hope the third or fourth time we'll be lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's very impressive. That's very impressive. How did you become so passionate about children's rights and children's best interests? What's the the secret behind it? Where the passion, like what's driving you?
All right, guys. Here's a personal story.
Mm.
Here's a personal story. When I was a young lawyer, I had my family law training at law school and bar admission course and mentors. I had some great mentors,
Hmm.
one of whom became a family court judge later,
Right.
who's passed on. Miss her very much.
Mm.
But family law was like for mothers.
Hmm.
It was for mothers and children. And fathers were not that important. And I sucked that up like everybody else.
Mm.
And I gave advice to women that I'm embarrassed about today.
Mm. Mm.
But then I had a case. It started in 84 or 85. And the guy came in to me and he said, I want joint custody. We didn't call it share parenting, but I call it joint custody. I want
Right.
joint custody of my son, David. His name was David. I want joint custody of David. David at the time was probably 3.5, 4 years old, something like that. And I said, there's a case called, there's two cases in the Court of Appeal. One is called Baker, the other is called Kruger.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of say that you can't have joint custody unless both sides agree. So the court will basically not order it. So if you want to have joint custody, you're going to have to be prepared to establish a proper record at the trial level. We'll lose at the trial level, and we'll take it to the Ontario Court of Appeal. And there we'll change the law based on the social science literature as it then stood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got a custody assessor who recommended joint custody. And he based it on the fact these parents were basically able to cooperate. And what you need for joint custody, as per the Court of Appeal, was cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that mom said she couldn't cooperate was false based on the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
She could cooperate. She was a good mom. He was a good dad. And there should be joint custody.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a judge, Justice Gooderall was his name. I don't know if he's still with us or not.
Mm.
He certainly retired from the bench many, many, many years ago. And we got the right judge, and he ordered joint custody.
Wow.
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 It didn't
Wow.
hurt that there was a case in Newfoundland called Parsons versus Parsons
Mm-hmm.
that was decided just prior to ours, after we had made the evidence was in, after we had made legal argument, and then they get my reports of family law. In those days, it wasn't just electronic; you actually got it in the mail.
Mm.
Case report, Parsons. Oh my, this says exactly what I want the law to be. So I sent it to the judge, and of course, the lawyer on the other side had a fit. He's now a judge. I think he's superannuated. He had a fit. I mean, he was right. I shouldn't have sent it. Of course, I sent him a copy, but
Mm-hmm.
no, you can't communicate with the judge unless I agree in advance. And he was right, but I did it.
Mm.
And the judge adopted Parsons. We were the first Ontario case ever in the history of the province to order joint custody over the objections of a parent.
Wow.
And wow. And then I started getting invitations to speak. There was an organization called HEART.
Mm-hmm.
There was an organization called Fathers Are Capable Too. There were other organizations, and I was speaking in libraries, I was speaking in church social halls, and I was speaking all over the place.
Wow.
That was, sure, I went and educated people on joint custody and how you had to do it, and the sort of record you had to create, and you had to cooperate and all that, and record of cooperation. I did my thing and told people, you want joint custody? Here's how you go and get it. And then I got invited to speak on other issues. It was wonderful for me to impart my knowledge over to guys and women.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I learned more than I taught. Because guys started coming up to me before and afterwards and in question period and telling me their stories.
Yeah.
And I was amazed. And so I was one of the first people on the listserv. I don't think it's very active anymore. Equal Parents of Canada, EPOC.
Okay.
I don't know if it's still around.
I haven't heard of it at all.
So I think there are about 1,000 or so people, members of EPOC. And we would share articles and stories, things like that. And I was I think I was the only lawyer on the list. And I was learning from what guys were writing. And I would talk to guys, not for a fee. I just talked to them. And I remember on EPOC, I said, well, we need shared parenting. Well, we need joint custody. We need joint custody, but there shouldn't be there should be no presumption. It's got to be on best interests.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, because of guys like you, I changed my mind. And the more I listened to guys and women, usually second wives and moms, and the more I read, and I started reading every article I could get my hands on in the social sciences. And it was developing and developing all the time. I thought, well, this makes sense. But wait a second, wait. If we get a rebuttable presumption for joint custody, if that's what we do, people are going to fight less, and that's going to hurt their business. Yeah. There are so few lawyers involved in this movement. There's Brian Ludmer, there's me.
Yes.
There's a few others. There's not a lot of us. Why is that? If the social science is so clear, and I in good faith say that it is, overwhelming, and I indicate earlier, the opposition knows that. Why aren't our lawyers getting on board? Could it be that what I had from time to time a thought, oh my goodness, this is going to really hurt my business because less conflict means less money. Maybe I shouldn't do this. You know what? I made a decision.
Right.
It's going to come. We should live to 120 years. And when you get up and meet our maker, he's going to ask you, well, what did you do? What did you contribute to the world? Oh, I made a lot of money. I don't think that's going to get you very far. I made a decision then and there many years ago. I'm going to fight for equal shared joint custody then. And that's where I'm at.
Wow.
Those people that write bad reviews about me on the internet. There are some bad reviews out there that say, "Oh, he just cares about money. Stay away from him." I think those people have their problems because
Yeah.
I've dedicated to my legal career, most of my legal career from the mid '80s. I was called in '79, as you indicated in the
Hmm.
intro. Thank you for that intro. Um, I've dedicated my career to having placed into law a legal position, a legal principle that could very well hurt my business.
Hmm.
And not just me, I worry about my associates because they'll be here, God willing, long after I'm gone. And I want them to succeed. I want them, hopefully, to carry on the Gene C. Colman Family Law Center. I want them to be successful, but not on the backs of the people of Canada, not on the backs of the parents of Canada.
Hmm.
Perfect. You shouldn't have to be super dad
Right.
to have a say and a role in your child's
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
And that's what it
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that, to make a short story long.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that every child deserves to have both of their parents in their lives. It shouldn't be the mother is the best or the father is the best. I mean, nobody gets trained to be a parent, but at least God blesses us with children, and He gives us that responsibility to care for them, to nurture them and to raise them in a way that glorifies Him. That was a very impressive one, Mr. Coleman. My other question has to do with William Fabricius, an associate professor at the Arizona State University, whose primary interest is in fatherhood and father-child relationships, and also protecting children's mental and physical health. He argues that the absence of equal shared parenting is a public health issue. What's your take on this assertion?
I agree with everything that Bill Fabricius says. And he's absolutely right. When you look at what fatherlessness causes, social cost,
Hmm.
in terms of adjustment of children, mental health, and scholastic achievement. And so, if you see your kids once or twice a month or three times a month, I call that fatherlessness because
Hmm.
you're going to spend a few hours and you want to have
Hmm.
some fun
Hmm. Hmm.
and do some fun things together, but you're not sitting down
Hmm.
doing the homework. You're not having an opportunity to talk to your child in depth about how did school go this
Hmm.
week.
Hmm.
Maybe some
Hmm.
do. I
Hmm.
applaud those that do.
Hmm.
But why is it that many of the youth criminals that come in the youth criminal justice system don't have dads on the scene? What does that tell you? Well, if you have a dad on the scene, even a dad that isn't the best dad in the world, even a
Hmm.
dad who isn't super dad, even a dad who isn't super dad, that has great effects
Hmm.
on kids. Kids need their parents, no matter what the gender. And I will take this further. It might surprise people, given that I might appear to be a religious fanatic to some. But no matter what gender, our office is proud to have represented people of multiple genders and
Hmm.
sexual orientations. They're parents. Each parent has something to offer.
Yes.
Social science research tells us that dads have what to offer, in terms of risk taking and physicality and stuff like that. But what about when you have two moms? Or what about when you have two dads?
Hmm.
Or whatever? The same. You need both parents. And when we take one parent, usually the father, not always, many mothers get very raw deals too, particularly Native women, particularly natives and minorities.
Hmm.
Don't get me going on child protection agencies. So you got to keep the parents involved, whether you are a judge, whether you're a lawyer, whether you are a child protection agency worker. That's what you have to do. And only in the most extreme cases do you excise the parent.
Mm-hmm.
I've had one case years ago where it was necessary to excise the mom. She had severe mental health issues and she was a physical danger to her child and had demonstrated that physical danger by acts she had taken. And then one current case now that is currently before the court where we are excising the dad because, again, we believe, not just because our client tells us, but looking at the evidence that she presented it to us, that the dad forms a real threat to the physical safety of the child. So there are exceptions. Yes, I might be Mr. Joint Custody in Canada, but not for everybody. Where there's a danger, you protect children. But by and large, all things being equal, parents, no matter what their gender, have to be involved. And it slays me, it dismays me. I get apoplectic about it. For me, and for others like me, it is just so obvious. You know, guys that are involved in the system, family law system, they feel they've got a personal tragedy and they're trying to work it out.
Right.
Okay, and I feel for those guys. I do. But that ain't going to change the law. That ain't going to change the law. What changes the law is people arguing that the social science, public health, and political expediency dictate rebuttable presumption of equal shared parenting. Let me just explain political expediency.
Okay.
Equal shared parenting in poll after poll around the world, particularly North America and Canada, has shown that the vast majority of the population supports the measure. They did a number of polls in Kentucky not too long ago. Kentucky was the first state to bring in a totally unambiguous rebuttable presumption for interim orders and then a little bit later for final orders. And they asked people in Kentucky, will this influence your vote? And then people polled in Kentucky, yeah. If you supported shared parenting, I'm more likely to vote for you. You know what happened in the next election? Every candidate, no matter what the party, that opposed equal shared parenting, out.
Wow.
Now, we didn't get the same polling results, and we ran a poll, the Equal Shared Parenting group, on behalf of the various organizations, leading organizations for Equal Shared Parenting in Canada. We ran a poll recently. The link is many places. It's at my website. You can look at the numbers. It was a totally independent poll. Nanos, Nick Nanos, it's his organization. It's a totally independent polling company. One of the published criticism of our poll was that we, the Equal Parenting Organization, sponsored the poll, so therefore somehow influenced the results. Nonsense.
Yeah, I saw that from Pamela Cross. Yes.
Yeah, Pamela Cross.
Yeah.
And I won't get any more on that. But we did not. Had we fixed the poll, we would have had numbers like Kentucky to convince the politicians. We didn't have numbers like the Kentucky poll.
Right.
The majority of Canadians are saying that it would influence their vote, but not the huge majority like Kentucky. So if we were going to fix it, we would have fixed it there. But of course, we can't fix it. He's an independent pollster. He helped us craft the questions a little bit, but that's all. To make sure that the questions are unambiguous, but acting as a social scientist, you have to know how to craft your questions. Largely, the questions were the same with the previous poll that a number of the organizations ran. And in every Canadian poll, and there's 3 or 4 of them, it goes up every year. And so we have, I think it's November 2021 or is it February 2022? I can't remember.
Mhm.
Recent poll,
Right.
the numbers are up even more.
Mhm.
So any politician that comes forward or any party that comes forward to support equal shared parenting is going to win at the polls.
Mhm.
So political expediency, yes, but don't do it just on political expediency.
Right.
Do it because it's what's good for the children of
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah. It is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do.
Absolutely the right
Yeah.
thing to do. You're going to reduce health costs. You're going to
Yeah.
reduce all sorts of social costs, and
Mhm.
you're going to save money, man.
Yeah.
Government
Yeah.
like to save money.
Yeah. The other question I have, just going back on Professor Bill's assertion, and I haven't come across many literature on this, but the question is, with much of the gun-related issues we have, predominantly in the U.S. In Canada, we see a lot of juveniles being thrown into prison, for bad behaviors and whatnot. Um, the question is, has that got to do with anything related to father's absence in the homes?
Yes,
In what way?
where father absence is correlated with mental instability and mental illness. And so if a father is absent, that doesn't make you into a mass murderer.
Mm,
But the mass murderers, I'm almost willing to bet, did not have fathers on the scene.
mm,
Would they have turned into mass murderers anyways? Maybe,
maybe.
but I think not. But we know just on so many axes that intensive father involvement improves outcomes for children.
Hmm.
So why wouldn't that be our social policy?
Hmm. Hmm.
This makes so much sense.
Hmm. 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 Now, just going back to the roadblocks, you had talked about how lawyers are scared, to touch, especially family lawyers are scared to touch this. Um, how do we get them on board? How do we get the Canadian Bar Association on board? Why,
You know what?
for me,
You're not going to do that. So let's be realistic. What we can do. Let's
okay,
be realistic.
okay,
Canadian Bar Association is an excellent organization.
mm-hmm,
Uh, it does many excellent activities. It runs many excellent conferences, and the
mm-hmm,
local branch here in Ontario,
mm-hmm,
the OPA,
mm-hmm,
also great organization, but it's establishment.
mm-hmm,
I remember one leader in the OBA.
mm-hmm,
This is pre-COVID when I went
mm-hmm,
person to conferences,
mm-hmm,
and we're standing in line. I think it was at the bar.
mm-hmm,
We're standing in line with our little complimentary bar tickets.
mm-hmm,
His name is Paul.
mm-hmm,
I won't say his last name. Good guy. And we're talking about our practices. And he was a family law lawyer, as I've always been. And somehow we got on the topic of representing men, and because I've been known around Toronto and Ontario, particularly as a man's lawyer, though not quite fair because we do represent women. Just wherever justice needs to be done, that's where you'll find my firm.
mm-hmm,
But we do have a reputation for representing men.
mm-hmm,
And so I'm talking about this. I said, Paul, you and your colleagues are leaving the whole market to me. You have a very small number of other lawyers. He said, you can have them. I'm not interested. You can have them. I said, okay, thanks. um, I'm not representing men because it's good for business. I represent men because it's men mostly that have gotten the wrong end, the wrong end of the deal, the raw end of the deal,
mm-hmm,
the wrong end of the stick, whatever the expression is. So that's why I do it.
mm-hmm,
And so there's that attitude amongst lawyers, and I think that's still out there. Now,
mm-hmm,
if you do a Google search on fathers' rights,
mm-hmm,
okay,
mm-hmm,
you do fathers' rights lawyer Toronto, I'll probably come up first. because my website is full of the term father's rights.
Right.
Even though, if I put this challenge out to the viewers here, go and search father's rights, Toronto or Colman or whatever. You'll come to my father's rights page.
Mm.
Read down to the end of my article on Colman's views on father's rights. You will find, and I don't even believe in the term, I believe that children have the right to have a relationship with their fathers, and children have the right to have a relationship with both parents.
Right.
Therefore, I prefer, and George Peace Corps supports me on this,
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to use the term family rights.
Mm.
But by family rights, people that are fathers are getting messed around in the system. They ain't going to find me.
Mm.
So I do have the term father's rights there, but I do explain my philosophy very clearly at my website. And but if you search, you'll find me, but you'll find others with father's rights.
Mm.
So ask yourself this question. Not that I want every single person to come to me. I have a limited team, and we couldn't possibly handle everyone starting to come to us. It's not that I'm pitching for business. But are these people that claim to be father's rights firms, are any of the members of Lawyers for Shared Parenting? I can tell you that very few are.
Mm.
Are these lawyers familiar, at least have some passing familiarity with parental alienation? Do they have some passing familiarity with the social science literature of impact of these sorts of issues on dads? I think you'll find that by and large, you'll find some that do, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think every firm that advertises itself as father's rights lawyer, those lawyers in that firm, or at least the owner of the firm, should be calling me and say, hey, I want to be a member of Lawyers for Shared Parenting, which Brian Ludmer and I and Georgia Lee Lang from out west, an organization that we put together. But they're not beating a path to our door.
Wow.
They're not. They're not. Because I've indicated earlier, I suspect that it's not in their economic self-interest. Maybe they never even thought of it before. Do these lawyers really fight for dads? I suspect that some of them really do. I hope so. You have to struggle. I don't like to use the word fight, but you have to struggle. You have to advocate, no matter who your client is, all within the limits of proportionality and cordiality and common sense and courteousness, which are measures, which are attributes that I try and instill in the lawyers that work with me at my firm. And but there are, like you said, yes, there are roadblocks. There's the CB, there's the OBA, there's that head of a women's shelter that you mentioned earlier that criticized us for.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to have her on a debate one of these days on the show.
Yeah, well, we've had some members of our group reach out to her, but she hasn't responded.
Yeah.
We welcome coordination, cooperation, and dialogue with those that have different views. And this is the Canadian, the Association for Equality, CAFE, and the CCMF.
Right.
Our organizations under the executive leadership of Justin Trottier, have been excellent at forging alliances and cooperation and dialogue with those in the women's shelter movement.
Wow.
And of course, now in Toronto, we have a functioning shelter that is for men and families.
Right.
Thanks largely to Justin Trottier and many, many other people that are associated with those organizations. So it is possible to cooperate. And indeed, the reason for the success in Arizona with their legislation is coming back to Professor Bill Fabricius.
Right.
And he explained to me many years ago that they sought out dialogue with those that had different political views of family law, particularly the concerns about family violence. They said, how can we work together?
Mm-hmm.
And in their legislation, yes, they got they got a more emphasis on equal share parenting, but they also addressed family violence.
Mm-hmm.
And family violence is something that we have to address.
Right.
So there are ways.
Right.
So we're joking about this one person you mentioned, but that being said, Canadian Equal Parenting Council, which I'm on the advisory board.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an official spokesman for them, but I've been one of the founders of the organization and
Mm-hmm.
active in it for many years. The Canadian Equal Parenting Council believes that it is essential to cooperate with other groups, with all political parties, and find ways to find common ground.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about women's shelters, I've said some things that might be taken as negative. I don't want to be negative. Women's shelters are very important because unfortunately there are some very violent men around.
Yeah.
And there are some very violent female partners of females around.
Yeah.
And if you don't have mom or dad to go to, maybe you need a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we need a shelter because family violence is endemic in our society, and we have to deal with it, and the shelters are a very good way of dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want anyone to come away from this podcast thinking the Colman's against the shelter movement. I'm not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. And I respect the work that they do. And I've had cases where I've had counsel on the other side from the Barbara Schleifer Memorial or Commemorative Clinic. Barbara Schleifer being a young lawyer that was murdered many years ago, and they created this women's shelter and resource center in her memory. It was horrible. I remember when she was murdered. Many years ago, we had a client. She was from Russia, her and her mom, and as was her husband. And the marriage was breaking down. And she came for a consultation. And we opened a file. She wasn't split from him. They're still living in the same apartment in the Bathurst Finch area of Toronto. And I did the usual, at the time, screening for domestic violence. Does he hit you? Does he threaten you? No. And then they're walking out, and the client's mom comes back to me, Mr. Colman, please don't let anything happen to my daughter. Please don't let anything happen to my grandchildren. I said, Mrs. Z, I've asked about domestic violence. Is there any domestic violence? Is there any violence? I need to know about it because I'll do the case differently. No. But please don't let anything bad happen to her. That day, my client was murdered with knives from the kitchen.
Oh, no.
With the two kids watching. And I can tell you, that had a profound effect on me. And I've gone through it in my head many times over. What did I do wrong? How did I not prevent it? How did I not see that coming? But I asked the client, I asked her mother. They denied any domestic violence. And then Grandma told me afterwards, that there had been, that this guy was a violent guy. And he did a number of years in jail, and then he was deported.
Wow.
And his daughter grew up to be an accomplished law clerk. And it was sad. The lawyer that was lead counsel, I was supervising the case. So my junior lawyer, his name was Mark. He finished off the year, and then he left, and he went to federal navigation law, federal aviation law.
Wow.
Furthest thing from family law I can imagine. And he told me he couldn't take that. He couldn't take it. And he was so good. He was so good in court. He was a champion debater in law school. And because of this, he quit family law.
Wow.
I stuck it out.
Wow.
But nobody can tell me that because I'm an advocate for dads frequently, that I'm insensitive to family violence. I'm
Hmm.
very sensitive to family
Hmm.
violence.
Hmm. No, family violence is very real. And to your point, I think the shelters are very, very helpful. They've been there to support a lot of women from abusive relationships, and I think it's a good thing. To your point,
And
it's a
now
very
we
good thing
have a shelter for men and
for
their
men
kids,
as well.
shelter men from
Hmm.
abusive relationships
Hmm.
as well.
Hmm.
And last I heard, the shelter's usually fully booked.
Wow, wow. So this goes both sides. There are men in relationships that are also being abused by by women, but it's for some reason we don't hear about that. It's not very much talked about at all.
Well, there is the Canadian, what's the Canadian Council for Men and Families, right?
Hmm.
CCMF.
Yes, CCMF.
Yeah, the CCMF, go to their website. There's a link there to the shelter, and there you are. And they got private funding,
Mm.
they got government funding. So some people have heard of them.
Hmm.
And I know just in the last 7 days, I made a referral.
Wow.
Someone wrote me, and
Wow.
I gave the link to the website, and I suggested that they search that out. The
Mm.
last 7 days, but how many of my colleagues know that there's a shelter for men? I don't know. So it's important to get the message out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. One more question, Mr. Coleman. I've often come across this, poster on Facebook. I don't know if it's a very good source, but it claims that on average, there's about 1 or 2 men that commit suicide every month, mostly related to, you know, child custody, not being able to see their children, or being alienated. Is this is have you
I
come
haven't
across such
I
information?
haven't seen stats.
Mm.
I would probably that's a North American statistic rather than a Canadian statistic. I would guess, but I haven't seen stats on how many.
Hmm.
I know there was a tragic suicide of one of our devoted advocates
Mm.
um, years ago. He was trying to create a shelter for men in, I think it was Calgary or Edmonton or Winnipeg, somewhere out west. And he donated his own house,
Wow.
trying to put the shelter together. I think it was called MASH 4077, actually, after the program, or MASH something. And and he had his demons stemming from his own family law case. I was
Mm.
not a lawyer, so I'm not divulging any privilege there.
Okay.
But that's, I know one advocate in the movement. Um, yeah, people sometimes lose hope, but I would say this to those of you that may be losing hope now: don't lose hope.
Mhm.
Don't. Things will get better. I'll repeat what I told the advocates that were at an equal shared parenting training webinar
Mhm.
a few months ago.
Right.
I spoke to them. I was invited to speak, and I spoke to
Mhm.
them. I said, we are on the cusp of achieving something here. I've drafted up this bill. We have the leading equal share parenting groups in Canada behind it. We've got senators interested. We've got MPs interested. We've got they doth protest too much at the C-78 hearings, as I alluded to earlier.
Mhm.
The movement towards equal shared parenting is coming our way, and we need everybody, all the people that have gone through it, men and women,
Mhm.
that have gone through this, to tell their stories, to stick around. There's a better day coming.
Yeah.
And I will tell one short story here
Okay.
of a client that came to me. And he hadn't seen his son probably in 12, 13, 14 years or something like that. His son was now 18. And I forget now, it was many years ago, exactly how we did it, but we did it. And lo and behold, the son lived in a different town than he did, but both in Ontario. I remember he was in Thunder Bay, I believe, this client. And guess who turned up at his door? Hi, Dad.
Wow.
Sorry, I haven't seen you in many years. Can we get to know each other?
Wow.
And they built a relationship. Now,
Wow.
there are things that you have to do when you haven't had contact with your children in a long time.
Mhm.
There's social media posts that are tasteful, not aggressive, not criticizing the other parent, even though she's well deserving criticism, but you don't, because your kids may read it.
Mhm.
And what you have to do, folks, is keep reiterating the love and respect that you have for your kids. And when you send that birthday card, when you send that Christmas card, you know she's going to throw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
Send it anyways. Send it every year.
Mhm.
Keep trying. When your kid does come back to you later as an adult, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
You want to be able to say, I sent you a birthday card every year. I
Mhm.
sent you a Christmas card every year. I sent you an Easter card every year.
Mhm.
Whatever.
Mhm.
I called your teachers every year to find out how you were doing. Whatever. Do whatever you can, whatever the circumstances that will allow you, whatever contact you can have. Do not give up on your kids,
Mhm.
even though they may say hurtful things against you because they've been brainwashed.
Right.
You got to be the adult here, and you got to just strengthen yourself. And there
Mhm.
are groups like Dads Matter Too.
Mhm.
There are groups like the CCMF. There are groups around. There is help out there.
Mhm.
Get the help.
Yeah.
Meet with other parents that have gone through the same thing as
Yeah.
you. Get support from peers. Get
Mhm.
therapy.
Mhm.
Don't ever, ever, ever give up on your kid.
Mhm. Mhm. That's amazing. That's amazing. One of the things that I think has worked, and has worked very well for me, is to you know instill that aspect of love in the children. That no matter what is happening, no matter what is going on at that moment, love will always supersede everything else. And so for children growing up to know that they are loved, I think it goes a long way. It goes a long way. No matter where and how far they go, they'll always look for that dad and that mom who loves them.
And along the lines that you were saying, sir, and that
Mhm.
I'm saying, if you haven't yet watched the movie Erasing Family,
Mm-hmm.
you must watch it
Watching it.
because it talks about kids that have been
Mm-hmm.
alienated
Mm-hmm.
and their individual stories and the family stories.
Mm-hmm.
I warn you, it's a tearjerker. I cried.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tearjerker,
Yeah.
but it's a very professionally done movie. Erasing
Mm-hmm.
Family. I don't know where it's playing now. I know pre-COVID it played at U of T somewhere, and
Mm.
down I gave an introduction
Yeah.
and answered questions at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where it is playing now. I
No,
don't know
I
on the internet, but you got to
mhm.
see the movie Erasing
Mhm.
Family.
Yeah. I've been
Maybe
screening.
so
Go ahead.
your group your show organize it for your group.
Yeah, I've been screening it. I've been screening it
Yeah.
for most of the for most of the religious groups, and also
Good.
on Facebook. So every now and then I screen it.
Oh,
I think it's yeah, it's
good.
very powerful.
Good to hear. Good
Yeah,
work.
very powerful.
Good
Yeah,
job. Good
yeah.
job. Good job.
I've been screening it a lot among most of the religious groups. Because we
Well,
need
you
to
don't
get
have to be religious to watch the movie. It's not a
yes,
particularly religious
everybody else. Yeah.
movie.
Hmm.
But I suppose if you are spiritually inclined, as you and I are,
Yeah.
as many other people are. It,
Hmm.
it gives an extra layer of meaning to you. But if you're an atheist, God bless you. If you're an atheist, if you're an agnostic, if you're not religious,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't
Hmm.
matter.
Yeah.
See
Yeah.
Erasing Family.
Yeah. No, I plan to screen it at least once every month on the
Oh
Facebook
wow!
platform, on YouTube as well, just to get the audience to watch it. It's a very
All right. So
powerful
what I want,
documentary.
Ben, what I want you to do is the next
Mhm.
number of times you're screening it, would you please send me advance notice
Yes, I
and
will.
let me post that up on my website.
Yes, I will. I will. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. My last question for you, Jane. Sorry, Mr. Coleman.
Okay.
Um, um, how do we encourage people to join this movement? Because what we want to accomplish is get everybody to hear about shared parenting, how important it is for families, especially children. That every child needs a mother and a father in their lives. We cannot, kick one out and expect that one can do the job all by him or herself. We need both of the parents together to raise a child. This is how children become very responsible in our cultures. What's your last message, and how do we encourage, or what's your words of encouragement to another parent who is probably sitting on a sideline, watching this, podcast and thinking, okay, how do I help? How do I get involved in this movement?
Well, one thing you can join Dad's Matter too, which is sponsoring this this podcast.
Yeah.
That's one group. There are other groups around,
Hmm.
and you can reach out to the. There's a Facebook page. I don't know the URL off the top of
Hmm.
my head, but
Hmm.
the Canadian Equal Parenting Council does have a Facebook page,
Yeah.
and people post there, and through there
Hmm.
you get in touch with the executive of that organization, and they and the various constituent organizations make up the Canadian Equal Parenting Council.
Hmm.
So I say Canadian Equal Parenting Council is the first place to go and say, hey, I'm in Thunder Bay, or I'm in North Bay, or I'm in Kingston, I'm in Belleville, wherever. What's the closest group?
Hmm.
But you know what? What COVID has taught us, it doesn't matter where you are physically.
Yeah.
We're on this Zoom-like platform here,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so it doesn't matter. So there are
Hmm.
groups all over the place in Ontario, in Canada, and not in every province. I'm
Right.
not aware of PEI or New Brunswick, though there may be groups there. And if
Hmm.
you're from PEI or New Brunswick or Newfoundland, let me know.
Hmm. For
And
sure.
more important, let the Canadian Equal Parenting Council know.
Right.
Join the Canadian Equal Parenting Council. I
Hmm.
don't think it costs much money, if any.
No.
And so just, and if you know what, if there's no group in your particular location, and you are of the ilk that believes that we can get back together in the same room, you won't get me in the room. I'll sit out on the porch. But form your own group.
Hmm.
And I can tell you, I'm going to volunteer the president of the Canadian Equal Parenting Council, the
Hmm.
premier advocate for equal share parenting, Glenn Cheriton.
Right.
Will welcome your email.
Yeah.
Will welcome your call.
Yeah.
And he is a veritable font of information.
Hmm.
Glenn has been at this, I think, as long as I have.
Yeah.
And there are people out to help.
Yeah. That's
Don't
awesome.
call me to help you form the organization. That's not my job.
Yeah.
But do call the Canadian Equal Parenting Council. If you put Facebook and Equal Parenting Council, it should pop up,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
post something there.
Hmm.
And um, when you're commiserating with people that have experienced the same sort of thing,
Hmm.
not just with them, but with their second spouses and with their moms and their dads and their brothers and
Hmm.
their sisters,
Hmm.
those are the people that we have to bring in.
Right.
Joe citizen on the street, this isn't going to be his. He's more, he or she is more worried about other things like, the price of gas and the price of food going through the roof and things like that. They're not going to, no, someone's not going to take this issue on because it's a good, proper issue to take on.
Hmm.
You've got to have a connection to it.
Right.
I'm happy to say that I'm married to the same woman for 50. two, 51,
Wow. Wow.
2 years, seven
Wow.
children. So I'm not working out my personal demons here. I fell into this, as I explained earlier, how it was. I
Right.
had this one case that fell into my lap on joint custody.
Wow.
Then I
Wow.
realized it was the way to go. But
Wow.
people have various reasons. So you will have, there are lawyers, there are social workers, there are psychologists, there are various therapists that who, like myself, have studied the social science literature because it comes across in your having
Mhm.
your practice, and they're part of the movement,
Right.
at least sympathetic, if not an official uh, part of it. So there are people out there to help, and it's good to reach out and not to feel alone, and not to feel that you're the only one facing this.
Hmm.
There are
Hmm.
other people out there that will be happy to speak with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is a very precious time that you've given unto us. And I think this, your knowledge, your wealth of knowledge, what you've shared with us is going to be a blessing to many dads and mothers that are going through, alienation, and also to be able to, I believe that by this, we'll be able to get more people on board to support shared parenting. It's
I
something that is
sure hope
dear.
so. We
Yeah.
can use the help, and
Yes. Yes.
I hope if I've been able to at least spend this time here
Hmm.
in preparation for this, and this time here, inspire at least one person to do one more good thing
Hmm.
for equal share parenting, or even just for themselves, then it's been worth it. But I hope more than one.